Hello everyone, I have a fun Christmas decoration pattern for you today. This is one that I've been fiddling with for quite some time and I think I finally got it just where I want it. We are going to make some little Christmas gnome ornaments and I'll show you 3 different ways to do the beards and how to do everything as we go along the way here. To make this pattern, you're going to need some worsted weight yarn. You can do it with other weights. In fact, I even made a little thread one who is just adorable, but he is very fiddly. So if you are feeling adventurous, you can certainly do this with thread. You can also do it with other weights of yarn. Just make sure you match your hook to the yarn. For these, I'm using worsted weight and I'll be using my G hook. So you want to go with a hook that's just a little bit smaller than the recommended for your yarn size, just to keep these stitches nice and tight. And then you're going to need, I'm going to use green and white and a little bit of kind of a tan color for the nose and some red, but you can make your gnomes whatever color you would like. And then of course we will need our scissors and our tapestry needle for sewing everything together. So grab your supplies and let's get started. Okay, the first thing we need to do is take our green or whatever color you are going to use for the body of your gnome. And we're going to start off with a magic circle. If you don't like the magic circle, you can always do the chain 2 and work into that first chain and pull it tight. We're just looking for a nice tight center to our circle. All right, get through there. And then we are going to work 6 single crochets into this circle. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now feel free to use stitch markers if you like. I'm going to pull this down a little bit tight, but not completely tight yet because I find it easier to work into the second round if it's not fully tight yet. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for round 2, we're just going to increase in each stitch. So we're going to work 2 single crochets in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and the last one, 11, and 12. So now I like to pull that center, go ahead and pull it nice and tight. So that we have a nice closed tight hole in the middle there. And then for the final round, we are going to do an increase and then a single crochet all the way around so that we will end up with 18 stitches. So 2 in this first stitch and then 1. There we have 18 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. And then we're just going to go ahead and break our yarn, cut our yarn, and just do a slip stitch here. We don't need to worry about any kind of invisible join on this because our join is actually going to be hidden. And you're going to make 2 of these. So I have one made over here already. And the second one, you want to make sure you leave a nice long tail for sewing. All right. But we're just going to work with this one for a second. And this tail at the top here, I like to just tuck it down so that it's out of the way because we will be using those edge stitches when we sew these 2 circles together. So I just kind of turn it over the back and tuck it in. It doesn't have to be super neat or anything. I just want that tail out of the way. Okay. Now we are going to grab our tan yarn, or whatever color you want to use for the nose. And we're going to start with a magic circle for that too. And we're going to do 6 stitches again. And this is where you can decide. I've made both. I started with a flat nose, and I just kind of decided I wanted the nose to have a little bit more dimension. But if you prefer the flatter nose, you're just going to do this first round of 6 stitches. 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you want your nose to have a little bit more dimension to it, will stand out and stick out a little bit, then we're just going to do a second round also with 6 stitches. So again, I'm leaving it a little bit loose so I can find this first stitch a little bit better. And then just work our 6 stitches around. 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we can go ahead and pull our center tight. And then we're going to cut. It doesn't have to be a super long tail, but long enough that you can gather up these stitches and also do a little bit of sewing with it. All right, so there again, the invisible join doesn't matter, so I'm just going to do a slip stitch pull through to close this off. And then make sure you turn it right side out. And we're going to start with the long tail that we just left. I'm going to thread that on my tapestry needle. And what we want to do is gather up around these stitches, because we're going to pull this guy closed into a little bit of a ball. Not a super tight ball. So we're going to find where we left off, and we're just going to go into each stitch around. And then we'll pull that tight to gather it up. Now that we've threaded through all of those, just going to pull it a little bit and see how it kind of gathers it up a little bit without making it a tight ball. And then we're going to switch over to, this is the tail from our magic circle. I'm going to thread that, and we're going to take our circle, our body circle, and I'm just going to find the center here. I'm going to poke the needle through. And since we pulled our circle tight, it's a tight fit. And then just go ahead and just pull that through and leave it loose. And then your long tail that you have left for sewing, we're going to thread the needle back on there. And then you're just going to align this. You want it maybe a little bit higher than center because you need room for his beard. And then I'm just going to poke through, and I'm going to do just a few stitches around the edge here to make sure that that nose stays where we want it to. It doesn't have to be perfectly sewn all the way around, just enough stitches to kind of anchor it where you want it to be on the face. And then when you've got enough stitches, I just pull it out, and I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to tie these two tails together. And since this is going to be on the inside, we don't have to worry about weaving any ends in. So I'm just going to take my scissors and trim those a little bit shorter. And there we have the start of his face. Now we need to do his beard. And we're going to take strands of white, or you could really use any color you wanted for your little gnome's beard. And you want about 4 inches of length here. And for me, I'm able to just take I wrap it around about 3 fingers and just kind of wrap it around like that. And then I can trim it. And then if I just cut along the bottom, that gives me about the right length. And you will need anywhere from probably 12 to 15 groupings of these, and I do 2 strands at a time to put through for the beard. So just make sure you cut enough little pieces of yarn to get your beard there, or you can cut as you go. Now to make the beard, we're just going to take two of these strands, 2 of your little 4-inch strands, and we're going to fold them in half. And we're going to take our circle, and you want to start roughly halfway up the nose is where you're going to start your first beard. And I'm just going to come out here and I'm going to find an outer stitch and put my hook around it like that. And then I'm going to take my loop and pull it through. And this is a bit fiddly because you don't want to drop your strings or anything. And we're just going to pull through enough there that we have enough space. And we're essentially just making slip knots with these. So we're going to grab all 4 of our ends here and pull them through our loop that we made and just pull that tight. And you'll do 2 on each side of the nose, and then you'll do a row across right underneath the nose here, and probably about 3 on the bottom. Just however full you want to make your beard. I have one here. So we've got all of that. And you can see there's different rows here. And so I've got the ones on either side of the nose. And then I've got a row here that is, I usually end up with about 5 in that row. And then the bottom row here. This one has 3. Sometimes I've ended up with 4. It just kind of depends on where your nose ended up and how, like I said, how full and how much space you have for your beard. But once you have that all done, we're going to grab our other circle, the one with the long tail, and we're going to sew these together. And that way, all of this mess on the back is hidden. So we're going to thread this, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this center one too, just otherwise I'll get it caught. And then we're just going to put these back to back and pick a spot. I usually like to start up at the top because that'll be covered by the hat, but you're just going to go through 2 stitches. So you're going to go through the top of a stitch on the back circle and the top of the stitch on a front circle and pull it through. And you're just going to whip stitch around. So always going from back to front or front to back if that's more comfortable for you, but always going from the same direction so that you end up with the whip stitch around. And just complete that all the way around the circle. Make sure you don't get the beard caught in there as you come around to the beard strands. And if there's any ends inside, you want to make sure those are kept inside as well. And then we're back up here where we started, and you're just going to make a little loop and tie that off. And I just tuck the end in a little bit down here. Again, you're not going to need to do super duper securing stuff because this will be all held underneath the hat. And there we have our body and face of our gnome. The next step is going to be to make his hat. And we're going to make 2 of these triangles. One of them is just regular length ends, and the other one you need to make sure you start with a long end and finish with a long end. So the long end that we're going to start with needs to be actually quite long, because we are going to have to crochet around the bottom of the hat and have enough left over to sew. So I would say we probably need a good close to 18 inches on that, just to be safe. But we're going to start and we're going to chain 8. Seven, 8. And then I'm going to work in the back bump of these. And single crochet starting in the second one, and do 7 single crochets across. And there we go, we have 7. And then we're going to turn and chain 1 and do just 7 crochets, 7 single crochets across, so that we have an even row here. And then turn, chain 1, and we are going to do a decrease. So we're going to single crochet 2 together here. And then 3 single crochets. And then single crochet the last 2 stitches together for another decrease. So we're starting to make our little pyramid shape here. So now we have 5 stitches in this row. So we're going to turn, chain 1, and single crochet 5 stitches across. And we're going to do another decrease round now. So turn and chain 1, single crochet the first 2 stitches together, single crochet 1, and then single crochet the last 2 stitches together. Turn, chain 1, and do 3 stitches across. And then turn and chain 1, and single crochet the first 2 stitches together, and then just a single crochet in the last stitch. Turn, chain 1, 2 single crochets across, turn and chain 1, and then we are going to single crochet these 2 stitches together. And then to really square off that top, I like to turn, chain 1, and then do a slip stitch into that last stitch we just made. And here you want to leave a long enough tail so that we have room to, we're going to stitch up and down both sides, and then you'll have to carry your yarn across the bottom. So probably another 12 inches just to be safe on that. And go ahead and pull that tail through. And you see that gives us a nice point on the top of his hat. And then you're going to grab your second triangle that you've made. And I went ahead and just rough tucked the edges in on here so that they're to the inside. And we're going to take our top length of tail that we left, the top long tail. Go ahead and thread that. And make sure you have any of the tails from that first triangle to the inside, and just put the sides together. And again, we're just whip stitching. You're going to go down one side, so whichever side makes the most sense to you, and try and line up. You can see the row ends here and the bumps. And so I just try to line the bumps up so that it's nice and even all the way down. And then when you get down toward the bottom, just make sure you really catch the corners there so that you have your round is, you're starting with an even round as we go, because we'll be crocheting around that in a minute. So just make sure you really find the bottom of each piece and get those connected together. Whoop. And then just pick a side. I'm going to go with this one since our yarn is sticking out on this side. And I'm just going to carry my yarn across rather than start up a new, you have to break the yarn and start a new one. So I'm just going to go under this first row of stitches here to get my yarn over to the other side. And then we'll do the same thing up the other side here. Make sure you keep this other long tail just out of the way. Don't catch it up in your stitches because we will be using that. And then just stitch up this other side. And then when we get to the point, we'll make our little hanger. I'm a big fan of just incorporating my hangers into my ornaments. If you prefer a second, like a different color, a contrasting color or something like that, you can easily just finish off and then attach whatever kind of hanger you want. If you're going to attach something, I would suggest you do it before you sew the hat onto the ornament. That way it's easier to hide any tails on the inside of the hat. But entirely up to you and how you prefer to hang your ornaments on your tree or wherever you place them. Right, we're back up to the point. So just do one final stitch, make sure it's really in the tip top of the hat here. And then to make a hanging loop, you're just gonna decide how long of a loop you want and kind of hold it with your fingers. And then sew through the top of the hat. This is where the yarn likes to get all tangly on itself. So I put a stitch through the top of the hat, and then I'm going to do another one, and this time go ahead and tie a knot in it and finish it off. So take the loop there that's left and secure that. And then you can tuck this end down in. And we'll just trim that off. And then we're going to grab our hook again and deal with this other stretch of yarn. So we're going to insert our hook kind of in this space here between these last stitches and pull up a loop with this long tail of yarn we have. And I'm going to go ahead and chain one. And what we want to do is do a round of single crochets in the front loop only of these stitches, so that we'll be leaving the back loop available for sewing it to our gnome's body. So I'm just going in the front loop only and single crocheting around. And that's where working in that back bump on the first row of these hats gives you two different loops to pick from here. as you're going around. And all this does is just gives him just a slight little brim to his hat and just a little bit more definition around the nose. You can skip this if you prefer and just sew the hat on, but I don't know. I fiddled with this pattern a lot and ended up with preferring the brim design. And just do that all the way around until you get back to your first stitch that you made, and you'll join with a slip stitch to that stitch. Oh, see? And I didn't quite leave a long enough tail, so I'm going to have to attach some more yarn to that. So I would say either I didn't measure correctly, or make sure you leave more like 2 feet on your tail. But that's all right. So ordinarily, if I had a long enough tail, I would then tuck this inside and use that to sew, but I will just get a little bit more red yarn. No matter, either way. You could also, if you wanted to maybe make it look a little bit more like a Santa hat, you could attach some white and do that around for this brim stitch around too, just to give the idea, like the little bit of white fur trim around there. It's really what your preference is for your gnome. I'm just going to tuck this tail in here so he doesn't come undone. And then do the same thing. I'm just going to go up and kind of tuck my tail in a little bit. And you're going to find, I find it's easier to turn that little brim that we made up so that you can see these back row stitches here a little bit more easily. All right. Now, you're going to want the side seams on the sides of your gnome's head. And you're just going to stick that in there and really make sure that the hat comes down right on top of the nose. You don't want a whole lot of the body color showing through there. And then you're just going to go into the body. Just make sure you don't go all the way through both sides of the body. And then you're just going to come up and catch the back loop of that next stitch. Again, making sure you don't pull the beard in, and continue that stitch all the way around. And I like to get right down next to his nose here, because I don't like much of the body showing above his nose. There. And you can fiddle with it as you go. If you really wanted to, you could stuff the hat if you wanted a puffy hat. I liked a little bit flatter look for my Christmas tree ornament. I really was originally going to try and make these as something that could go in Christmas cards, but with 2 thicknesses of yarn, it's a little too thick for the post office's preferences there. But that's okay. And this can get a little tricky. Right, as you get back around to where you started, you're just going to finish it off with, secure it with a regular knot and tuck your end in. And then you can decide on if there's any modifications that you want to make to his beard. trim that. So you can totally just leave the beard as he is with his little just strands of yarn. Or you can take and divide out that yarn into its 4 plies and just leave it curly like that, which I kind of like that one. He's kind of fun. Although depending on the day, I change what I like. And then if you want to go super fluffy, you do this part first, and then you take a fine tooth comb and comb it out, and he gets really fluffy. So whichever beard preference you like, or if you want to do some of all 3, but that is your little holiday gnome ornament. And like I said, if you like thread, you can certainly do it with thread. It works with that as well. If you prefer a print version, make sure you check the link below. You can head over to the website where there's full instructions and photos, and then there's a downloadable PDF as well. And I hope you enjoy and make yourself some fun, festive Christmas gnomes.